Hello everybody, my name is Manuel and welcome to another Eternal Contenders episode. Today I got another pretty sweet deck of my own design for you guys that I have been doing rather well on Ladderwish lately. It's called Combrenan Killers. It's basically a Combray Killers list that splashes lightly for a couple of shadow cards, basically only Dark Return and a couple Madness for synergy with Copper Conduit and some other cards. Alright, so the deck basically plays out like a fairly aggressive, interactive mid-range deck. Um, Ultimately, you're trying to like set up a dominant board position and kind of control the opponent's side of the board with like killer effects and just smashing into them with big units. Alright, so let's go over the deck card by card and explain what everything is about and why it's there. So like Copper Conduit is like one of the cornerstones of the deck and that like made me want to build the deck. Copper Conduit's interaction with Dark Return and Safe Return is pretty great because usually like the first time you play it, it's slightly underpowered and below curve, but like the second time you play it with like a Dark Return or Safe Return, it is gonna be gigantic, and the Overwhelm makes sure that it doesn't get chump blocked to be raised by aggressive decks, for example, and stuff like that, and that the card has the appropriate impact on the board. Basically, if you have like a 10-10 Overwhelm, that's really hard to ignore. Also, Safe Return is really nice at a couple other things that I will get into. And yeah, it's also even better if you put a Predator's Instinct on it, because all the Overwhelm damage will go to the opponent's face, and if we rebuy it with Dark Return or Safe Return, for example, we get to Killer again, so that's great. And at the same time, it's also a nice enabler for Dawnwalker. And I'll go over the units first and then over the other cards. So Initiate of the Sands is just a way to speed up the deck, and I think synergizes well with Copper Conduit because it gives you bigger conduits earlier, and it also synergizes with cards like Safe Return because it makes it easier for the deck to have that one spare power to use your Safe Return on, for example. And also is nice to like accelerate out a Dawnwalker or a Siraf on turn 2. Or a Titan on turn 3, obviously. And sometimes you have these draws where you can Awaken Student on 2 and trigger the Empower if you have a Seed of Progress turn 1. So the other units basically like are the two hyper efficient 2-drops. Since the deck is like not a dedicated aggro deck, it only wants like very flexible and versatile and powerful units. So there's only Desert Marshal and Awaken Student. Student, as we all know, scales really well into the game, is a great attacker and a great blocker, and Desert Marshal is lots of utility, gives you a lot of play, gives you a lot of ways to blow out the opponent, and is sort of like a removal and a trick all in one, and at the worst, it's also a small attacker on an empty board. And it's nice to be able to rebuy an effect like this with Safe Return and Dark Return if you need multiples of those, so that also basically improves the utility of the return cards. Dawnwalker is just nice with a deck that has currently 11 faddies that return it, plus the returns that let you replay a faddy or rebuy a faddy, and one Ember Monument as well. So overall there's like 12 actual units that get it back, plus return effects on these units. Sometimes even like an Awakened Student gets big enough that a Safe Return or a Dark Return on it gets back a Dawnwalker, for example. And yeah, Dawnwalker is also obviously has nice synergy with the Predator's Instinct. It's not as fast as it used to be in beta when it didn't come back exhausted, but it is still a really nice grind engine, basically. And it's a good way for this deck to grind more controlling decks and decks like Armory, for example. And well, yeah, Siraf doesn't need much explanation. Good stats, Overwhelm, great way to win in the late game if we like dealt with everything the opponent has and the opponent doesn't have anything left, or like nothing, like a random unit left and we have a Siraf left and make it to 8, we can just start activating our Siraf and win that way. Card is just so good. It's like a nice early blocker and attacker and a great late game win condition. Sandstorm Titan, not much explanation needed. Great with Dawnwalker, great with Predator's Instinct, good return target, and just overall powerhouse. And even nicer if dropped on turn 3 with Initiate of the Sands. Carnosaur was one of my latest additions. The triple time is a bit taxing and a bit restrictive in the deck, but I think all in all it's fine. Like sometimes you won't be able to use him on 6 power due to the seals and like the 3 color aspect of the deck, but the deck is heavy time and it's like not that hard to set it up, and it's just nice because it's like another removal that is not bad against unit light decks or when the opponent doesn't have a unit, and has great synergy with the 8 return cards because returning a 7/7 killer is pretty good on a lot of boards and deals with most units pretty efficiently and just gives the deck some more punch and some more ways to deal with annoying units without having to run dedicated removal. Alright, so let's talk about the spells. Like Dark Return and Safe Return, I think I said most about it already. It is great with Predator's Instinct, it is great with Conduit, it's great with like most of the hyper efficient, powerful units in the deck. It's even better with like a unit that we used Instinct on, and Instinct is just also really nice with so many efficient units. It's great with Conduit, with Dawnwalker, with Student, reasonable with Siraf, and great with Titan, or like even nice to reactivate a Carnosaur's killer if that's all the targets we have. But preferably you use it on like a unit that doesn't have killer yet, so Dark Return and Safe Return can rebuy them with the added benefit. Seek Power is just part of the power base and needed to fix the splash. And as you can see, there's like no dedicated removal at the moment, like no Vanquishers or anything. So it's basically Predator's Instinct and Carnosaur and like Desert Marshal are meant to like cover most of the removal base alongside Madness. Madness is like takes sort of the slot of something like Vanquish, which is a lot more flexible. Like Madness here can basically be paired with Predator's Instinct on the stolen unit to trade that unit into an opposing unit if the opponent has 2 units that are capable of trading with each other. If that's not the case, you can sometimes just Madness their best unit, attack with it, and then Safe Return it to basically steal their best unit. You're ultimately still trading 1 for 1 because you basically invest Madness and Safe Return to kill their best unit and get a copy of their best unit, so it's a 1 for 1 trade. But you also deal some damage and you get a huge quality boost because getting their best unit is usually like really powerful. And yeah, so these are like some of the nice things it does, but it also just sometimes nicely generates pressure and like is a finisher, like in a spot where stealing one of their guys impairs the board enough to just kill them basically, which is really nice. So Madness is just a really nice multi-purpose tool in this deck, which is much more flexible and much less dead than a Vanquish can be. And last but not least, we have the power base. So 4 Seek Power is pretty much mandatory in a 2-faction deck with a splash that is a little slower. Only 1 Shadow Sigil. Like, I wish I could run 0, but you need the 1 because of the Seek Power. The duels are set up in a way that the seeds are all time for turn 1 initiate, and then like the Justice Shadow duel is a banner, since you don't need that to be depleted early, but you rather have that depleted, like undepleted later down the road to curve out. So like mixing seeds and banners in a deck with sufficient units is always a good plan, and then you only want the seeds to be the ones of the color that you need the earliest, and the banners for later. Like if the deck wouldn't need any at all, I might even run like less seeds and more banners, but the seeds are important to make initiate work. One Ember Monument just to like balance the power a bit, make sure the deck doesn't flood too much. I mean, it might even be a little ambitious because we, after all, only running like 29 power and 4 initiates, so not sure if the monument is 100% correct, but it has been testing fine so far. And yeah, the rest is just like sigils distributed in like the amount needed for the deck with a focus on time. Deck has 16 turn 1 time, which is like sort of the minimum for turn 1 initiate, in my opinion. And yeah, 3 diplomatic seal, simply because the deck, aside from Carnosaur, basically only needs like 2 time, 1 shadow and 1 justice, making seal a great fit in like setting up your influence early. I only run 3 seals because of the seeds, and also because drawing multiples can be a bit awkward, especially with Carnosaur even more so. So 3 is like a nice number to give you a sufficient amount of shadow sources. Like right now the deck has 4, 8, 11, 12, 16 shadow sources, which is a pretty good number. Like 15 to 16 is like the minimum I feel comfortable with playing these cards reliably. So that is totally fine, and I guess I couldn't fault anyone for like, especially with Carnosaur, considering to maybe like cut 1 seal for like a Combrenan banner or a time sigil maybe. Like, let me check the justice. 4, 8, 11, 14, 18. Yeah, it probably would have to be a Combrenan banner because like a time sigil would cut the justice a bit too short. Like right now it's 18 justice, that would be 17, and 17 is a little light for Student and Marshal and Siraf, because we really want to play them like basically every time we have them. So yeah, if you want, you can cut a seal for a Combrenan banner. That seems like a reasonable option. It would slightly hurt Initiate of the Sands, but it would benefit Carnosaur. So that's kind of like the trade-off here. I prefer to have a little like more reliable initiate and smoother deployment, and 3 seal has been fine. Like the 4 seal would be a bit ambitious, especially with the Carnosaurs. Alright, that's it for the deck list. I've been running around 65% win rate with this deck for I think like 40-50 games or something. So the deck has been doing rather well. And it also is a lot of fun to play, and it also has a lot of play and a lot of ways to like react to what the opponent is doing and blow out the opponent and stuff. So it's pretty adaptive, which is always nice in gameplay, because it allows you to properly adjust to what your opponent is playing and what your opponent is doing. And yeah, that's, I think, a big part of the high win rate of the deck, that it is so flexible, basically, which is great on ladder with facing a wide variety of decks. Alright, that's it for the deck. As usual, I'm gonna hop into some high masters rank games with this, so stay tuned for the first half of the games in a moment. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.